Here's the blurb about Whipping Up a Storm by Natalie Rowe. Whipping Up a Storm is about Natalie Rowe and her exploits with misbehaving men from the highest echelons of society, entertaining billionaires, bankers, actors, sports stars, old Etonians, and government ministers. She rose to fame when a photo of her and the Chancellor of England, George Osborne, came into public view. Funny, touching, and explicit, Natalie Rowe arrived in London from Bradford as a teenager with 30 pence to her name. Within 2 years, she was working as a high-class, I'm going to say sex worker, hooker, to the residents of London's five-star hotels. In her early 20s, she founded her own business, Black Beauties, the UK's first ever escort agency specialising in Caribbean, African, Brazilian, all women of colour. So I'm going to look inside the Amazon preview. This was added onto Amazon May 2015. So, Whipping Up a Storm by Natalie Rowe. Author's note: it is important to ensure that the details of some of the individuals encountered through my work are not set out in a manner that would enable people to recognize them. With careful consideration, however, I've decided not to conceal the identities where I feel it is of public interest and to highlight the hypocrisy of others. Chapter 1. The City Broker. Hello, it's me, John. On the other end of the phone was John. He was calling me from his office. John worked at Lloyd's of London, where every day he was handling millions of people's investments. He was confirming with me our appointment later that day. Guess what I'm wearing, mistress? What are you wearing, John? Imagining a new suit or something. Mistress, I'm wearing a pair of stockings under my trousers. You're a naughty boy, John. Does it please you? Of course it does. What made you do that? I have a confession to make. What is that, John? I said in a curious and stern voice. They're your stockings, mistress. I hope you don't mind, but I took them on my last visit to you. That was very naughty of you, John. I know, mistress. You can punish me when I come over later. Why did you take them without my permission? Because I wanted to feel close to my mistress, and guess what else I've got right here with me? Tell me. The pipe. At first I was bewildered. It couldn't be. As in the crack pipe. Yes. What? You're smoking in the office at work? I knew then that John was headed down a slippery slope if he was caught smoking crack at work. You'll get caught, I whispered down the phone line. No, I won't. And anyway, the door's locked. And sure enough, he lit the pipe while I listened. Then he blew the smoke out. How on earth was he going to function? High on crack, I wondered. He was playing a dangerous game. I'm high now, mistress, his voice now sounding different as the cocaine took a hold. I can't wait to see my goddess and worship at your feet. I was nervous for him, that he would get caught or someone would smell the odor that the crack was surely giving off. Right, mistress, I'll see you later, back to work. John was a long-time regular. He had been a cocaine snorter when I first met him, nothing unusual there, but he had now switched to crack. What he told me was that while I'd been on holiday, he had visited another vice girl, and she said she couldn't get any to snort and had introduced him to crack cocaine. A lot of crack addicts, prostitutes now, were deliberately introducing the stuff to their clients in order to support their own habit. Plus, in many cases, their pimps were their suppliers. This was now the Lloyd's of London executive drug of choice. I came from a respectable background, and I wanted for nothing. Every Sunday I took piano lessons, and one day a week I attended drama school. I was an athlete, breaking the Yorkshire record for under 15s, even though I was only 13. I was a star netball player and a popular girl. As an A student in my class, but always felt a bit of an outsider. I loved to sing, grew up listening to Motown, ska, and Northern Soul. I knew all the Marvin Gaye hits, and every Sunday morning I would pretend I was singing a duet with him. I was going to be famous, I just didn't know when or how. My parents were born in Jamaica and emigrated to England. I was born in Bradford, Yorkshire, was one of 2 children and had a happy childhood. I was the black sheep in the family, just felt I was destined to do something other than get married and have a few kids and go to the Mecca Club on Saturday night and have roast chicken and Yorkshire pudding on a Sunday. The cold cobbled streets and the cotton mills, the same familiar chit-chat every day, just didn't appeal to me even at that young tender age. I never felt that I fitted in. I felt too contained. And one day, having experienced the loss of a close family member, I ran away, couldn't get to Hollywood, so London would have to do. 2. A shelter. Now, a teenage runaway when I arrived at Victoria Coach Station with 30 pence and a packet of luncheon meat sandwiches to my name. I already missed my dad and brother desperately, but I swore I'd make them proud of me. One day, as I left the station, I started to marvel at the new and strange city, and a short while later, lost, I decided to take a seat at a bus stop. An old man came and sat next to me. He made eye contact a couple of times before leaning over and saying hello. I looked back at him shyly. Busy? Doing what? Looking for business? What do you mean? I answered, looking confused. Sorry, forget it. He got up and left. Hours passed. I sat, shivering from the cold, watching commuters. As the rush hour crowds thinned, I forced myself to get up and walk the streets. It started to rain, and I was soaked by the time I found shelter in a covered bus stop. 3 black guys sat next to me. They were laughing and joking and seemed nice. One of them offered me a cigarette. We started to chat. I told them a bit about myself, shed a few tears. They took pity and took me home with them. The Yorkshire Ripper, Peter Sutcliffe, turned out to live next door to one of my neighbours, and so the last thing I should be doing was wandering off with 3 strangers. My instincts told me that I could trust these young men. Going off with those 3 boys isn't something I'd do now, but I had been talking to them for a while about my life, and I could tell from the way they responded that they wanted to do the right thing. They lived in a house in New Cross. I was so glad to have somewhere safe to stay. What would I have done had they not offered to help me? We talked about Yorkshire, what it was like there. They cooked me supper and assured me I was welcome to stay for as long as I needed. I'll never forget their kindness. The following morning, one of them showed me an ad for a job as a chambermaid in a hotel. Room and board was included. Perfect. The Mount Pleasant Hotel was in King's Cross, a Victorian building on the corner of Calthorpe Street and King's Cross Road, originally a doss house for working-class men. At the interview, I said I was 18. The managers didn't ask for ID, and I was paid in cash. My job was to make up the beds and clean rooms all day long. Nobody ever checked my ID. I was confident and looked old enough, so there was no reason for them to. I even managed to open a bank account under a false name, Natalie Edwards, without using ID. You could in those days, and would take my brown envelope containing £33, my week's wages, and pay it in. It was a tidy sum, especially as room and board was covered. Having my own money felt great. I shared a damp and smelly room with warped floors with 2 other girls, Lisa and Katrina, a family of cockroaches, and a handful of mice, in a house not far from the hotel. We didn't talk about our backgrounds, as we were all running away from something. We were united in our emotional pain, missing families and friends. One dark-haired Scottish girl told me that her father had sexually abused her. On those occasions, we did mention our parents. I talked as though Mum was still alive. We all smoked cigarettes. I was still not into alcohol because of the taste. I stuck to avocado, my Christmas drink, as a child. I certainly didn't want to spend any of our free time in our little room. I went with Lisa and Katrina to Park Lane. All I knew was it was the most expensive section of the Monopoly board, and that was where I wanted to be. I was our unelected leader. I couldn't help myself. I was always the boss. If I wanted to go see the hotels of Park Lane, then we all did. I always made the decisions about where we were going and when. We stood outside first, looking through the windows of the elegant Dorchester and the more modern skyscraper-style Hilton, at the chandeliers and the cars pulling up, unloading the great and the good. I was the first to walk in for a closer look, followed by my new friends. Even though we clearly didn't fit in, no one stopped us, and we explored the luxuriously spacious loos, testing the perfumes and soap, admiring the huge mirrors, fancy lights, and patterned tiles. I thought if I ever ended up homeless again, I'd sleep in the toilets of the Park Lane Hilton. A silly thought, I know now. Work at the hotel was long, beginning at dawn. And okay, so that's all of the preview. Natalie Rowe, Whipping Up a Storm. Whipping Up a Storm is about Natalie's exploits with misbehaving men. I'm quite proud of her. And the photos are charming. She has this most absurd photo of George Osborne disco dancing while someone else is snorting up some lines. And then she has a picture of him at a table with her. She's trying to hide the cocaine behind this big potted flower, and he's quite enamored of her. It's just all over his face. He thinks she's the coolest thing ever, which I have to say, I just think that's so cool that he likes black girls. But I guess maybe he was horrible to her, or else why else would she be calling him a psychopath? and everything he's doing to the terrible country. But it's quite unusual. I read her whole tweets. When I first found this out, it was like 5 days ago. It was blowing my mind. I read all her tweets from like all the way back as far as I could. And the funniest one was her having him chained to her radiator, no, handcuffed to her radiator. But she's more than so funny. Because you have to understand the whole subculture of the dominatrix nonsense. And he's a Gemini.